G'day, I'm Ali Amo, and this is the A Lease on Life podcast. We're going to roll a little differently for this episode. Put a call out on socials asking if you could ask a psychic anything about their gift, what would you want to know? Coming out of Canada, I have with me Kendra Angela, and she's going to be answering all of your questions. Thanks for being here with us today, Kendra.
Well, thank you for having me.
They call me Ali Amo for a reason, so I'm just going to rapid fire at you if that's okay.
Have at her.
All right, the first one. Chloe said, this is going to sound weird, but I've always wondered if they do readings on themselves, or do they get someone else to do a reading for them? How do they choose that person if so?
Okay. If you have abilities, and I want to clarify why I use that word ability. I don't necessarily love gift, and this is the reason why. Because my ability is just like an NHL hockey player or a pro tennis player. They're not gifts, they're abilities. Everybody has something to offer the world. And I just feel like gifts is something that can be given and taken away. You can't take this away. The universe can throw consequences at you, and you may not be able to access those abilities anymore, but they're not actually taken from you. They're still there. They're just not accessible. Just like if a pro tennis player lost an arm or a hockey player lost a leg and you can't skate. It's those sorts of things, but you still have all of these abilities. If you have abilities like someone such as me, you're in constant connection with your guides anyways. They are your driving life force. So readings aren't necessarily needed to be sought, because if you are connected to your team all the time and following their guidance and doing what you're supposed to be doing, that's why people come for readings, right? Because they don't have the ability to access as easily or aren't as confident in the messages they receive. Have I had readings before? Absolutely, I have, because I am also human. And sometimes life and the human side of yourself can make things a little bit murky. So I may have sought outer guidance to make sure that what I'm hearing and what I'm receiving is on track. It's just like getting an outside opinion for anything else. But I haven't had one in probably over 10 years. So I would say most individuals that I know of in my intuitive world don't seek it out as often as individuals who don't have the abilities or the connection that we do.
That makes total sense. Can you give us a bit of an idea of the scope of your abilities so that we know the perspective that you're coming from?
Most individuals will have one or two that they really use and access. Clairvoyance is like seeing, having foresight. So you might see pictures like movies in your head. Another one is clairaudience, which is hearing your guide. The other one is claircognizance, which is just a knowing. And some people intertwine claircognizance and empathic together because it's feeling, but it's not the same at all, because empaths feel emotions. And when you're claircognizant, you just have a knowing. It's not tied to emotions at all. Then there's a rare gift of smelling energies, which is clairolfaction. Then there's emotional empaths and physical empaths. I actually have all of these very strongly. So it can be quite overwhelming depending on the situation that I'm in. And it's taken years to learn how to manage them so that they're working in my best interest. Because a lot of times when I'm mentoring people who are just learning about their abilities, they want to know how to make it stop, but you can't, because that's a part of you. So You can't turn it off. You can deny it, but then is going to follow a lot of other things that are not pleasant. So you have to learn how to manage them. I have all of them, and I have worked healthcare for quite some time as a medical imaging technologist. Being a physical empath, when you're dealing with people who have physical illness or broken bones, because we deal a lot with that. We deal a lot with surgeries. And my body was taking a toll because it just absorbs that energy. However, I did have a few physicians that I formed really good relationships with and would be like, hey, before I x-ray this, I can tell you it's broken. And they're like, how do you know that? Like our assessment is not indicating that, but we're doing this just because of the history. And I'm like, well, I'm telling you it's broken because I can feel it. I can feel it in my body where that patient is having it, that something is not right. Generally, most individuals have one or two that they really rely on solely. So it would depend on the type of reading I'm doing, which one I'm choosing as my lead to really tap into more than the others.
How often do things come across that you do not want to tell the person you're reading?
When I first started sharing my abilities publicly, it wasn't that I didn't want to tell them, because I know this information is being shared with me to share with them for a reason. But it's a reluctance because often I know how that individual is going to react in receiving the information that I'm about to relay to them. I'm very compassionate, but I'm very direct, because you came here to receive the information that your guides want to share with you. It will be kind and it will be full of love, but it's not always easy to hear. And lots of times I actually tell individuals prior to, like when they book a reading with me, this is my style. So if that's not something that you think is going to work for you, then it's probably best we don't work together. Because if a person is quite emotional about something and it's not what they want to hear, it can be devastating and have long effects for them. People can come and ask me a question and I can say there's no answer at this time because your spirit team wants you to focus on something else in your life, and that's irrelevant to what is going on. So people will say, oh, intuitives are a farce or whatever, but we're not a farce. We're just a messenger. I'm delivering the messages I receive. And if someone's spirit team doesn't want to answer that message, it's because there's nothing for you to know about that situation.
I think you also have to take into account that some things are supposed to be explored and experienced on your own. So I sort of take it sometimes it's part of your journey to discover that on your own rather
It
than to
is
walk into something with
It
background
is
or,
that, but
yeah.
what I'm going to tell you my experience with that is, it's that exactly, except they're having intuitive hits about something that's supposed to happen, but it might not be 5 years from now, and there are things they need to navigate before they get to that. So that's why Spirit's not telling them about it, because it's irrelevant, and then they're going to sabotage what's supposed to come organically to them. Now, they could come back in 4 years after they've navigated some of the experiences that needed to happen prior for another reading and ask the same question. And there might be more information to share because they're in more of a place to receive. So yes, that's exactly it.
Makes sense. Well, you've already kind of answered the next question, but I'll throw it at you anyway. Corinne asks, how actively can you turn it off if you need a break from it?
Yeah, it's not turned off. It's just, like I said, it's managing. There's techniques that I use, such as meditation, where I'm just in tune with my guides. It's honestly like being a medium, because there's a difference with being an intuitive, but also having mediumship skills. There are intuitives who can connect with your spirit guides But there are intuitives who can connect with deceased loved ones, and it's not the same. Just because you have intuitive abilities doesn't mean that you're connecting with deceased individuals. And I think that that gets really, really messed up thanks to media. People just think that all intuitives talk to dead people or see dead people or whatever, and that's not the case. For me personally, working in the hospital, it became overwhelming because I do see them and I'm a very strong medium. But I would simply put up a no business zone when I'm here between these hours working, like closed for business, 2 people who are passed over trying to connect with loved ones. And I know they're there peripherally, but they're not bothering me. There's ways to manage things, but you can't turn it off. Like I said, or you're ignoring a part of you, and then everything else in your life kind of goes out of sync too.
Well, I sort of replied saying everyone I've ever spoken to has said managing the activity that goes on within and without the person with these abilities is probably their biggest struggle in life, depending upon how the journey's unfolded for them. But it's not an easy thing to navigate. And I think you were the one who was telling the story. Was it your son?
Oh, about
So
bringing people home from work?
Oh, this is hilarious. I want you to tell this story. This story is gold. I couldn't stop laughing, but also my heart was like, poor thing.
Okay, so I have a son who's adopted, and it's quite interesting because his bio mom is very intuitive. And it just how life synchronicities came together. And I'm not supposed to be able to have children. And she had said to me, I really believe he needs to be in your home. Would you be his legal guardian? I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess. Since I'm not able to have children, this is the way the universe is gonna make me a mom. Great. And he's a very intuitive. I've had him since he was a baby and he's 13 now. But when he was about 6 or 7, he would come out of his room and he would be, Mommy, you brought some strangers home from work again, and they're standing at the end of my bed and they won't go away. Or, Mommy, there's people from work in my closet again. I don't choose to use my clairvoyance as much with deceased individuals. I would rather feel them or hear them because it gets quite overwhelming if you see them, but he can see them and he is annoyed because he's trying to sleep and there's someone staring at him. And so we, at a really young age, had to really go through how to ask them to leave and how to put up business hours for your bedroom. And it gets quite interesting because he would be telling my mom that I was bringing people home from work. And my mom's like, what's going on? Well, mom, not those kind of people. I'm not bringing regular people over. So it made for an interesting journey, I'll tell you that.
I love that story. That makes me laugh. You're bringing people home from work with you again.
And they're standing at the end of my bed staring at me and I can't sleep.
I find it interesting how accepting, I don't know if it's the right word, but just how kids just go with the flow of whatever it is that they think or they're experiencing, they're seeing, they're hearing. There's not as much questioning and doubt and
No,
yeah,
because
a lot of the
because it's
adults
so
do.
real to them and no one has programmed into them that that's not real or that's fake or that's pretend. And I guess he's just super lucky because I grew up that way. So I never discounted what he was seeing or hearing or knowing. I more or less encouraged it because a lot of kids will have imaginary friends and their parents tell them no. But unfortunately, parent, there is someone there for real. You just can't see them. And it's not bad for them to have those friends or have those experiences because they're trusting what they know. And when we take that away from them, then they at a young age start to not trust themselves. And that's how we build people who lack confidence, because they were told all of these things that they knew when they were younger, they didn't know. So then they're like, well, I guess I don't know. Do I know anything? Right. And the other thing too is when my son was just a little bit older, my dad's dad, so my grandfather, passed away when I was 14. And my son had never met him, obviously. He came running to the house one day, and my mom and I were having coffee, and my dad was around too, I think. And he's like, there's an old man living in the bin. There's an old man living in the grain bin out there. And my dad kind of giggled because my dad is incredibly intuitive and a very powerful healer. And my dad's like, oh, grandpa's playing with the kids again. It's almost like normal talk in our house where if some people would come around, they'd be like, this family is crazy. About a week went by and my mom used to pull out all the photo albums and let my son and her foster children just go through them and ask questions. Who are these people? And what was this picture of? And all of a sudden my son's like, this is the man living in the bin. And it was my grandfather, and he had never seen a picture of him before. It just goes to show, for him to never have seen him before or knew who he was, that it's very real.
It's funny, in my mind, it's giving Oscar the Grouch vibes, but I'm not sure what they were seeing him do, but they're just seeing a man in the big. SJ, I'll start with the crazy one.
Okay.
Have you ever used your psychic abilities to profit from a game like Powerball?
No, because that would be an abuse of my abilities, and there are consequences for things like that. It's like a karma thing. It's like there's an unwritten code of ethics. How I would explain this is when I started doing this professionally and publicly, my grandma's like, oh, so you're a gypsy. And I'm like, okay, grandma, sure. Okay, gypsy, yeah. And we kind of got into it. And my grandmother's very religious. I grew up going to catechism in the summer. Like I went to school all year. And then on my summer holidays, I went to Catholic school. This is how churchy my grandmother was. She wasn't against what I was doing. She just didn't understand why I'd want to do it. And I said, so grandma, when you read the Bible and it talks about prophet and prophetesses, they're doing what I'm doing. So why are you calling me a gypsy? Or a medium was a term used for individuals who were using their abilities to prophesize things that people didn't want to happen, but they were trying to share that hard times are coming, but they were casted out. And he said to grandma, that's what I'm doing. So what's the difference of what you're calling me? I'm using my abilities to help others better their life. And she's like, I can't believe after all these years you've just schooled me on something I should have known. Call yourself whatever you want. It's the reason I like intuitive, because I see how when you search psychic, you like see reviews and people making fun of them and whatever. But not a lot of people have a huge attachment to the word intuitive in a very judgmental way. And you use the word medium, and when you look at it from a Christian perspective or a very religious perspective, it's taboo. For some people who embrace it, it's not that bad. But the energy behind it sometimes is horrible. And I can feel that receiving energy in the judgment. So I really had to pick a word that resonated with me and projected energy that was manageable.
You can see throughout history the stigmatization of certain things. In a way, if you look at the narrative of Earth and civilization as we know it, you can see that in many ways, I'd argue it was very much necessary for us to get to the place where we're at now. Everything that used to be hippie and gypsy and all that sort of stuff when I was a kid growing up is now what everybody's into and what everybody's open to and interested in. And it was like, because it's tried to be constricted and limited and shut down for so long and cut people off from it, now it just seems to be so mainstream. I'm almost grateful that we had that push to keep things constricted, because it pushed people towards it, and a lot more people are open now as a result. But I really feel for the people generations and generations before people like you.
The whole reason I actually started working professionally and opened my business was because my dad had stuffed his abilities for so long that he actually fell into a very deep depression that required hospitalization and a lot of, probably 10 years of very hard times for him and very hard times for our family, watching him go through that personally. And I was like, okay, I need to show that it's okay to talk about these things and to do these things and talk with him about them and be more open about it and kind of help form an alliance. Like, he has to do his own healing work, but I can't imagine what that had been like for that many years, because I know I kept quiet about my own abilities until I was about 25, even though I knew I had them since I was quite young. Like, I was born naturally like this. I didn't experience some near-death experience that prompted my abilities or opened me up. Granted, I've had 2 NDEs that have heightened some that I wish it wouldn't have, more than they already were, but I was born very connected. And so we talk about it a lot. Like, my dad used to say, I used to see people all the time, but like, I wasn't going to tell anyone. They were going to put me in an insane asylum. And I was smart enough to know that. So I had no one to talk to about it. And we've had a lot of conversations about that. And I honestly really, really feel for those individuals who were outcasted and made out to be wrong for something that is so far from wrong that I can't imagine what that was like.
Me either. It made me start thinking about Jim Carrey's conversation when he was talking about depression. It's deep rest because you're not being who you're supposed to be yourself.
Well, you're shrinking
And it
yourself,
very much,
right? You're
yeah,
depressed. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think part of the journey for you both was for you to awaken that side of him and for him to push that side out of you as well. But it's also a good way to connect.
I would agree.
Lucky you were there for something like that for him. It wouldn't have been easy.
No, it certainly isn't. And it's a challenge every day, especially like on top of being highly intuitive. When you are a natural energy healer, it's very taxing because it's like a double whammy as well. Because there are healers, they're intuitive in a different sense, but they don't necessarily have the same type of abilities as someone who provides readings. There's a lot of people who do both. But there are people who are
Mm.
separate, people who can just connect to guides and know things. And then there are people who just naturally heal energy. But when you have both and it's a combination, you experience very different things, which means you're navigating a lot of different challenges at the same time. And then let's add on to the bit of human challenges like regular everyday life on top of all of these other things, and finding a community that understands the extra challenges on top of life. It's easier now, but it's still hard.
That actually leads me to my next question. SJ also asked, how do you protect yourself energetically while doing your work? And how do you recharge or cleanse yourself after?
Energetic protection is a conversation that provides a big thorn in my side. Our own energetic field, or our aura, if you prefer to call it that, our personal energetic field is the strongest defense we have. And people will say, oh, I'm going to change my thoughts. It's going to change my life. No, because if you don't consciously care for your energetic field, everything on this planet is made of energy. So your thoughts are driven by your energy and they turn into thoughts and then it outputs energy. If you're focusing on changing your mind to output a different thought, if you're still fighting the energy that's feeding the thoughts and going against it, now you're not in alignment. Therefore, you will never change anything. It won't work. It'll just be a vicious cycle. And I just did I do free card pulls on my Facebook page every single weekend, every Saturday and every Sunday. You can pop on my Facebook page. I usually put a post. It's a reel with writing and info, or I'm speaking and I'm telling you what the expectation is for the day. And I pull a lot of cards. Like sometimes I pull 100 cards in a morning for individuals. I really just let spirit guide me depending on what we're doing. And on Sunday, I did something very different. And I asked people to be really vulnerable because spirit asked me, like, please use this deck that you only use for yourself. I've never done free card pulls with it. It has a lot of information in one card pull. But spirit says, like, you need to have something in return because, like, let's really give these people something. Let's leave them with something today. So you had to be vulnerable publicly about something you were working on changing for yourself in 2024. Tell me how it's going and how you're feeling about it. And then I was really tapping into people's energy and pulling them a card. And I got a lot of private messages after just saying, oh my God, I can't believe how that's really connected to. But the thing I noticed was a lot of people wanted to change all of these things, but they aren't aware that while they're doing that, they need to be learning how to take care of their personal energetic field. So if our personal energetic field isn't a healthy amount expanded out from us, then it's a moot point. There is an actual amount, which in the 3D world, we would call personal space. It's actually that space, but where is it? How do you identify it? How do you know what to do with it? And how do you feel that energetic field and how do you keep it full? And when you're experiencing something harder, it's important to expand it beyond that point to keep pushing those harsher energies. They don't push them away, but it creates kind of like a filter. So just in life, everything good and everything bad is going to happen. When we're experiencing not feel good energies coming at us, if we expand our energy, it creates a filter to slow those energies down. So when they hit us, it doesn't hit as hard, but we are still aware of it and it's easier to navigate. So instead of getting bombarded with anxiety or having a meltdown or not being able to function, becoming extremely nervous, you're like, okay, this energy is here, but I can still breathe and I know it's there. And you're able to think your way through it because it didn't come super hard and fast at you, because your own personal energetic field slowed it down. It will not take it away. Protection creates this idea for most people that it won't get you. Oh no, it's still there and it's going to get you.
You're not impenetrable, but you sort of like it lessens the blow.
Right, like it's like putting on a bulletproof vest, right? The bullet could come through the vest and cut your skin, but it might not kill you. You're still going to feel the effects from it after, but you're going to be okay. And you were able to navigate your life because you had the vest on. When we talk protection, it's really about learning how to utilize your energetic field, how to maintain it, how to care for it, how to check it, and to be aware of it very consciously. How do I recharge? I live in the middle of nowhere and I don't involve myself with people. That's how I recharge.
Living the dream.
My mother sometimes will be like, have you gone out in the world? No, Mom, and I'm aiming for 8 weeks. Like, if I don't need to go out in the world, I'm totally okay with that. That's how I recharge. Another way is also meditation. But people also have this idea about meditation where it has to be very formal. But what people don't understand is that meditation is any activity where you are in the zone. You feel your happiest. It doesn't matter what's going on in your world, that you're okay and you feel okay in that moment and you're going to be okay. And you know that in an hour when you're done, you can deal with the rest of the stuff. That's meditation, being as present as you possibly can be with yourself and what you're doing. Coloring takes me there. I just lose myself in the colors and the creativity of combining colors. In the world, we push hobbies, find something to do. It's not about socialization. It's about rejuvenating yourself and being present, and it's re-energizing you. So that's really what it's about. It actually affects your energy more deeply than your social aspects, because maybe socialization for you energizes you. And maybe that's where you feel the most present. So if you're doing an activity, it can still be meditative if you're interacting with other people. It's about being so present in the moment that nothing in the past and nothing in the future is affecting you right now. There's like use of crystals and all of these other lovely things. But what people don't understand is a crystal isn't going to help you if you haven't taken care of your energetic field. So you can carry as many black obsidian or tourmaline crystals in your pocket that are known to amplify protection energy, but they don't actually amplify protection energy. They actually amplify your own energy. So if your own energy isn't very good, that's what it's going to amplify. And we know energy attracts energy. You need that amount of energetic running off of your body to charge the crystal in order for it to work for you. So if you don't know how to prep your energy to use the crystal, you literally just have a rock that's going to do nothing for you, unfortunately.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that chick? I think she's in the US, and I think she wanted to sue someone. Well, she tried to, and she made the news because she was carrying a crystal in her bag for like 3 months for something to do with a job, wanting a different job, and nothing happened.
Oh, no.
She was just expecting. Oh, I remember hearing that story and just thinking, oh my God, like giving crystals a bad name, but there's a lot of misinformation out there. And the idea is if you have crystals to protect your energy and you're not protecting your energy, there's only so much that other external forces can do. Ultimately, you are the most powerful force.
You are
right?
the most powerful force. And the thing is, if you learn how to work with your energy and you learn how to expand it and you learn how to clear the holes in it and you learn how to maintain it on a daily basis, your energy will be so big that it will repel those yucky energies from you. So you won't even have to deal with them. And honestly, you wouldn't need crystals for that purpose. This one client I was working with a few years ago, she was having a lot of trouble at work being bullied. And I'm like, well, your energy isn't big enough. Let's start working on how to expand your energy and getting your energy out there. And I said, I am telling you, if you work on this for 90 days and put the effort in, it's amazing how the bullying at work is just going to stop. And you won't know why. It'll just stop. And then the human part of your brain is going to start telling you that you're getting fired or there's something wrong because now nobody's talking to you. But like, instead of thinking that, you're going to tell yourself, well, nobody's talking to me. That's great. And she came back and said, like, this is crazy, Kendra. And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, why don't they teach this in school? I wish I would have known because I just lived through 5 years of hell. And I said, but look, it only took 90 days to change that. So now you can just move on with your life. She ended up getting a promotion in a different city, in a different office with people who were nicer. And it didn't really take a lot of time, a lot of money. Literally, we had 6 sessions together. That's it. Not a hard concept, but it does require your effort.
SJ, the last question he had, this is a big
Okay.
one. What led you to realize you had psychic abilities and how did you initially react to this realization?
So when I was little, I used to be like, hey, did you know this? And people would just be like, what? And then it got to a point where people were telling me to shut up. I think because it scared them because I would tell them things and then they would happen. it got uncomfortable for people. So then I actually shut myself down, and I just really was like, I just won't talk to people then. I didn't shut my abilities down and deny them. I was just like, I'm just going to observe the world. I was always like, why is that person doing that? Don't they know that this is going to happen? Well, I don't understand why all these adults are doing these things. It don't make sense to me. I was about 7 and the light bulb went on, and I'm like, oh my goodness, people don't see things the way that I do. I just assumed we were all the same. And it wasn't making any sense to me why people were doing these things. But then it became more difficult because it's like, well, who is like me? Where are these people? How do I find them? It was also around the same time where I had a drowning experience, because from the time that people started telling me to be quiet till that time, it was really killing my spirit. I believe that's why the NDE happened, was because like I almost probably quit fighting. And I remember seeing this big white light and this booming voice saying, you need to kick your feet at the end of the light. And I'm like, oh no, that's okay. I want to come to the light.
Yeah.
And then came, your work here isn't done. I had no idea what that meant. Like I was 7. So I just started kicking my feet, and someone picked me out of the water and put me on the deck of the pool. But nobody seems to know who it was. Nobody there did it.
People who were there saw you come out.
No, they
but
didn't
don't
see
know.
me come out. They seen me drowning, and then
okay.
people started panicking and running around. But when they came back, I was laying on the deck, but nobody there knew how I got there.
I've had an experience where I've had, I'll call it physical support from non-physical.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I 100% believe that it was
Whatever.
spiritual energy. Yeah. Yeah. It
I
has
was
its own
definitely
force
saved
and
in a
power.
car accident once from a semi hitting me. It literally picked my car up and put me over top of another car. And my kid said to me, Mom, what just happened? And I'm like, I don't know, but we're okay. We never spoke about it again, because when I think back about it,
That would have
it's
been a lot.
surreal, because I remember in that moment thinking, we're going to die. And all of a sudden I could just feel the car being pushed and moved, like so gently gliding. And then all of a sudden I was just on the other side.
I'm very curious to ask you, with the drowning, you didn't feel any pain. It was very pain-free and peaceful.
Oh, yeah. It felt like I was
Yeah.
going somewhere fun and I just wanted to go there. Like it just felt like home. Home. That's what I would explain it as, home.
I'll never forget, I was visiting my partner's mother in hospital, and I met a man who was bandaged, almost like mummy
Right.
state of a bandage. And I just said, Jesus, mate, what happened to you? And I was wearing like a Superman
Yeah.
shirt. And his missus got out the car and she went, oh, he thinks he's you. I'm like, what? And then he was trying to talk to me, but he couldn't. And I found out that he'd absconded from another hospital because they'd caused him more pain than anything. And she said they've ripped the breathing tube.
Right.
She pulled it too fast and he's got vocal cord damage at the moment. He can't talk. And she said he was spray painting his car and he stopped to have a cigarette and at some point lit the car and the fence and himself on
Oh my
fire.
God.
Yeah. And I just went, oh, that is my worst freaking fear, my biggest nightmare. I don't understand. And he pulled me in and he made sure he said this. He said, I wish it happened again. I wish I'd got to stay. I never wanted to come back here. And I'm like, but wasn't that the worst pain you've ever experienced in your life? He said, absolutely not. He said, as soon as the whole thing went up in flames, the first person he saw was his grandmother. And he said, I missed her for so long and it felt like home, like you were saying. At no point did he feel any shred of pain. And he had his moment with her, and once he was told he needed to go back, he was fighting against it as much as he could, but there was nothing he could do. He was just sent back. And then all of a sudden he's felt pain and screamed a little bit, and that's what got the attention of his girlfriend. And he said what happened in the moment was nothing compared to what happened after, and everything from then on has just been an absolute physical living nightmare. And when his missus was telling me what it was like hearing him scream in this cold shower she's put him in, but I just thought, you have these fears around death and the physical experience that you endure and how that is as an emotional process. But from all the stories that I hear from the NDE stuff, it all seems to be quite similar. It's like you get to check out of the physical world and you go into the spiritual.
When I was 14, I had another one. I had a surgery. And I remember going down a white hallway. It was different than my first experience, but the same. I seen the same light. I heard the same voice, but the gateway to get there was a little bit different. I remember running down the hallway, like I'm going to go before anyone knows I'm going, right? And I remember just running and just feeling like the coolest, warmest breeze, but just like smelling home, this sense of home and what I think home smells like. And I was excited. And then all of a sudden, the nurse in recovery was shaking me. And I could hear the beeping and everyone running and trays were tripping over. So my stats had started spiking like I was dying. And it was kind of half in and half out. Then I started yelling, "Oh my God, I died. My mom's going to be so upset. Someone better go tell my mom. She's going to be so upset." And I'm yelling it out. Then I finally like came back and the nurse is like, "It's okay, honey. You didn't die. You didn't die." And I'm like, I remember looking at her saying, "Oh, why not?" She looks at, I'll never forget, she looked at the other nurse is like, "I think she's had too much morphine." And I remember when I was running down the hallway, that voice coming back and saying, "Unfortunately, you must turn around. Your work here is not done." And I'm just like, this is like the worst thing ever. Like I keep getting denied access. Like, what do I have to do?
And it's funny that you keep going there and it's not.
Now they're gonna have to like drag me in there because I'm like, well, if I go there, they're just gonna kick me out again. But yeah, so those were my experiences. I haven't had any more since, but I think it shows the challenges I was navigating being me with all of this stuff that I was carrying and not having a ton of support and trying to understand it and navigate it alone at that young age. But it's almost like you want to fix yourself when you don't know anybody else like you. I knew my dad was, but he didn't really talk about it at that time. You know, I was just trying to find my tribe. And then I found my coach and she coached me through some things and taught me some really good management tools. And then my life changed and she stopped coaching me and became one of my very good friends. And then when I started coming out, people that I grew up with, I was like, oh man, I'm probably getting judged, but whatever. Like I'm an adult and life moves on. But people would like email me or text me and I hadn't heard from them in years. That's so cool. It explains a lot of things about you. And I'm just like, so you all knew that I was different, but you all were just standing there? Like, so it's kind of crazy how I probably would have had that support, but I didn't know.
Well, the tribe assumes its formation when the time is right.
Oh, absolutely, right? Like I had to try and die 2 times before it got itself started out.
I'm curious to know if while we've been talking, I don't want to say bothered, but is there things that you've had to ignore while we're talking, or have you been left alone for the most part?
Have you had a bird as a pet?
Yes.
Is it deceased?
I would assume so.
It's been there for a while, but all of a sudden it's like crystal clear. I'm seeing a deceased bird over your right shoulder.
What
I get dogs and cats all the time, but like all of a sudden it was just there. It's still there. It's like above it's like beside your ear. Interesting.
This is the first time I've had Jacko come through. I always wondered what happened to him, to be honest, because the fact that he was raised in captivity and he was set free, it was a very bittersweet moment, if you can imagine. I was grateful because I love when animals are just free,
right? Yeah,
in general. But that fear, like, I didn't want him to come back because this is your chance to fly and live your life, but you just don't know how long or if, or, the survival side of things. But I would hope he had a good life towards the end. I'm wondering if I've done this to you because I said something. It's like awoken the beast, even though your hours are closed currently.
No, I don't do a ton of mediumship readings anymore for a multitude of reasons. When deceased animals or loved ones appear, it has to be for a reason. And so I'm not sure why he is specifically coming through to you, because that's super, super strange to me. And it reminds me of the time when I said to a lady, I was doing a reading, I'm like, your grandma showed up riding a whale, but I wasn't doing a mediumship reading. And like, who says that? Like,
it's got no
and when it came out, my human side of myself was like, you sound ridiculous. And she screamed and started crying and dropped her phone and picked it up. And I'm like, hello, are you okay? And she's like, I'm just, give me a moment. And she said, when we were kids, we had this pool in our backyard. And my dad decided to buy us this big blow up whale. But because it was so big and when you're wet, it's slippery. When it was in the pool, we could never get on it because we would slide off of it. So we always had to pull it to the edge and jump on it. And then our dad would push us away. So my grandma was over and was saying, like, as if you guys can't get on there. So she jumped in the pool with her clothes on and was going to show us how to ride the whale. And he said, well, yeah, did she lose her glasses and break them in the bottom of the pool? And she's like, yeah, she did. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm just letting you know your grandma showed up in your reading for some reason and she's asking about her house. And then the girl was like, me and my husband just purchased her house from her estate that's been unsettled for 10 years last week. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess she's happy you have her house. And so that's how these things work. But it's just like me saying to you all of a sudden out of the blue, did you have a pet bird? Like it's just these random things, they just happen. I did a reading last week for a lady and I said to her, your mother keeps talking about some sort of heart-shaped locket connected to a red dress. And the woman's like,
right.
Okay, this is really, really creeping me out. And I'm like, okay, well, you can share if you want. And if you don't want to, that's fine. I'll just tell you her message and then she's going to be on her way. Like she said, she's not staying. And so then I told her the message and she cried. And she goes, I have no more questions. That's all I needed to know. That answers everything that I came here for. She just lost her mom not that long ago, I guess. She told me after we were done. I said, obviously, your mom just wanted you to hear it from her so that you know she's doing okay and that she's there with you. She sent me an email after and she's like, I'm still mind blown how that all went down. I thought I was getting this life path reading and whatever. I'm like, well, so did I, because I don't really do mediumship readings, but she was not going to go away because she kept flinging this necklace in my face. I just knew that if I gave her 2 minutes of time, that this lady was going to move on. So it was not a big deal. And that's just how it works.
Can I ask you one last question? For people who have lost loved ones, the case is very often that they're around. Are there any specific signs that you attribute to having a loved one around you or a way that they try to remind us?
This is something else that really frustrates me because people will, oh, if you see a dime, that's a so-and-so, or if you see this, that's a so-and-so,
Further.
blah, 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 blah. And I don't like that because every single person communicates with the universe in their own language. What I will do is help clients to accept what they know is a sign from their loved one. So what I would tell people specifically is don't discount what you know. When you see something, that thought that comes to you, go with it and acknowledge it. And so if you see something, you're like, hey, that's my grandma. Be like, hey, grandma. Literally be like, hey, grandma. And if you acknowledge it and it is grandma, you're going to continue to see more of it because grandma's like, oh, she's getting the message. So I will continue to show her that I'm here. Having those conversations and those dialogues, and don't be afraid to do them if you want to connect with your father or a friend that you lost or anyone or a pet even. My friend has lost her dog and she's like, maybe in a few years we'll get another one. I think it's been 10 years and she can't bring herself to get another dog. It was just too hard for her. She's never gotten rid of her dog's toys. Well, every now and then she finds his favorite tennis ball somewhere. But no one there is playing with the toys. They don't have children. Right? And so she knows, and that's just how it is. And she's never discounted it. He knows that you know that he was around because he leaves the tennis ball, and that's all that matters, right? You don't need proof. Science says everything is energy. Science says energy can move energy. When you see a sign and you think it's someone who's passed on, know it's them and just, again, say thank you. Thank you for showing up. Or, hey, I see you there. I don't know why you're doing this, but I get it. You're here. Right? And carry on because they'll keep coming around and you'll know that they're there and you'll be able to form relationships with them. And just one more thing I wanted to talk about too is people need to understand, for me personally, me and my guides speak a different language. I can't even explain it. It's like a light language. So when I hear them, it's not in English. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. I've never heard it spoken, and I've done some research and some audio. Like I've Googled different languages to be like, is this it? Is this it? No. And it's weird because I just instinctively know what they're saying and I'm able to translate it into English, but I just trust what I know, you know? It's exactly the same thing when you see a sign from a loved one. It's exactly the same thing. You just got to trust what you know. Even though I have no idea what language we're speaking, I just know. It's like I spoke it in another lifetime.
Is there a greeting or something that you say upon contact sort of thing?
No, they're just
that you could repeat
like
now so we can hear
chattering in my head, sitting at a boardroom, waiting for me to open up business. You know, like get your day started. Okay. You need to do this and you need to do that. Maybe you should work on this. I think you should cancel your plans because of that. Like, it's literally this team of
managers, but it sounds a bit.
Yeah.
Supervisors, managers.
There's like a woman, I wouldn't even say it's a woman because they're not people. They're energies, but it's very feminine energy is the leader, followed by like 5 masculine energies. I'll tell you, the men like to speak more than the woman. I'll tell you that much.
Well, thanks for being here with us for this app. New ones come out to you every other Thursday. If you'd like to get in touch with Kendra Angela, you can hit up her website, www.surpriseyourspirit.com. And from that website, you'll be able to get in contact with her, book a reading, or look at all of the amazing online stuff that she's creating for us. As always, if you'd like to stay up to date with the world of Ali Ammo, follow me on socials. You take it easy, people, and you'll hear from me soon.